Sophie Marceau froze in place, unable to take her eyes off an old battered movie poster depicting a young Christophe Lambert. It was a poster for the movie Greystoke, the Legend of Tarzan of the Apes, where the aspiring actor played the main role. A sudden epiphany struck Sophie. She felt as if she had finally found the perfect character for her new film. "Oh my God, it's him. It's definitely him," she whispered, shocked by this unexpected discovery. And the next second, she couldn't hold back her emotions and screamed out loud, "It's him. I finally found him." Dominique Besnear, her old friend and former agent, who was sitting opposite her, choked on his coffee and almost dropped the cup from his hands. He looked at Sophie like she was crazy. "Who were you talking about?" "About this Lambert. Are you crazy? This guy has been blown away for a long time. No one is filming him. Forget about him, Sophie. I'm serious. Don't even think about taking him into your movie. It won't end well, believe me," he began to admonish her. But Sophie didn't seem to hear his voice, continuing to mutter stubbornly to herself, "It's him. It's definitely him. That's who I've been looking for so long." Dominic annoyingly stubbed out his half-smoked cigarette on a saucer and tried to reason with his stubborn girlfriend. "Listen to me carefully. This is your second directorial project. The first film was received very coolly. You don't want to drown the second one, do you? Remember, you asked me for advice. So, my advice to you is that there are two main roles in your film, male and female. As an actress, I don't doubt you for a second, but Lambert is a very dubious candidate. You can see that the man will turn 50 soon. He looks lousy. His face is swollen and rumpled. His hair is thinning before his eyes. Or do you think the audience won't notice that he's wearing makeup? Believe me, this sight will not cause a wave of adoration, but an attack of pity mixed with disgust. Understand, his finest hour has passed a long time ago. Now Lambert is remembered only by the complete fans of Highlander and Tarzan. For everyone else, he is a relic of the past, a shadow of former glory." Sophie listened to this confession, biting her lips. How unpleasant it is to hear such a thing from a close friend. But she understood that Besnear wanted only the best for her. For so many years he had been her agent and loyal colleague, and she had come to trust his impeccable instincts and business acumen implicitly. And now, on the eve of the start of filming of the mystical thriller Missing in Deauville, Sophie came to him for advice. There was still no ideal candidate for the role of the main character, and time was running out. Dominic, meanwhile, switched to discussing the film itself. "So, let's take it in order. Do you have a drama, a detective story, a retro love story? A cop who has a crush on the ghost of a missing rich lady? I don't know, I think it's a hackman plot. Although, if you play the main female role yourself and partially transfer the action to an era with beautiful costumes and interiors, then a certain part of the public will fall for it. After all, you are the face of Chomet, the highest-paid French actress, the darling of millions. Won't the audience believe that a fatal beauty can fall head over heels in love with a middle-aged man?" Sophie knew perfectly well how risky it was to start such a project. For 6 months now, she has been trying to find the perfect character, personally conducting auditions and auditions. Alas, so far without success. None of the applicants had that click, the magical chemistry, without which the movie would not work. And now seeing Lambert on an old movie poster, Sophie suddenly realized with crystal clarity that this was fate. He's the one she needs. The filming of Missing in Deauville took place in the heart of the Normandy resort. The filmmakers stayed at the Villa Gardenia Hotel, whose windows overlooked the beach. Sophie preferred privacy and stayed at a small hotel nearby, the Closerie. Already on the first day of filming, Christophe did not miss the opportunity to tease the mundane director. "Aren't you bored having breakfast in the company of millionaire old ladies? Don't they slurp their dentures too loudly? Don't they forget them in bowls of porridge for an hour? What is it?" he asked with mock seriousness. Sophie just grimaced and offered to get to work. Christophe was a real fruit indeed. Always shaggy, ungainly, angular. His glasses were constantly sliding down his nose, and his clothes were hanging in a bag. Sometimes it seemed to Sophie that he was not 50, but at most 15, such a boyish enthusiasm emanated from Lambert. On the set, he constantly amused everyone, turning the shooting into an endless skit. He waved his long arms comically, pretending to be a clumsy klutz. He stumbled out of the blue, fell, sniffed. Sophie even allowed him to take pictures in his own clothes, a rumpled shirt, invariably sticking out from under a sweater, old jeans, and worn-out shoes. This only added credibility to the image. Tired of life, ridiculed by everyone, a policeman obsessed with the idea of solving the mysterious disappearance of a socialite. The whole city made fun of him, writing him off as a crazy marginal raving about long-forgotten stories. Truly, the role seems to have been created for Lambert. Sophie knew better than anyone what it was like to be both a director and an actor in her own film. Double the workload, double the responsibility. She was rushing around the playground, breaking out into a scream for any reason. Either she didn't like the lighting, or the costumes weren't the right ones. Either the makeup artists ruined the wig, or the operator takes the wrong plans. She swore at the assistants because of incorrectly sewn buttons, at the editors for crooked gluing. One day, while smashing a negligent film crew to smithereens, Sophie suddenly heard a stifled giggle behind her. Turning around, she found a stunning picture. Christophe put on her wig, tied a handkerchief over his head, and, making faces, silently repeated her angry tirade, comically flashing his eyes and shaking his fists. The whole group froze in fear, waiting for the inevitable scolding. But Sophie unexpectedly burst out laughing. "Do I really look so ridiculous when I'm angry? My God, what fears!" Embarrassed, Christophe immediately pulled off the ill-fated wig and made a guilty face. "Come on, madam, you are the very charm." "Well, maybe a little strict, but it's even better this way." It was at that moment that Sophie was surprised to realize that she had finally and irrevocably fallen in love with this ridiculous, funny, beautiful man. The realization overwhelmed her, knocked the ground out from under her feet. Lying awake at night on the veranda of the closery and looking at the scattering of stars in the black sky, she replayed this thought over and over in her head. She is 40, has a difficult divorce, 2 children, and the fame of the Iron Lady of French cinema, and also the reputation of a quarrelsome, hysterical woman who is impossible to work with. And lo and behold, an adult, a woman who has lived her life like a knave girl, falls in love with a funny, shaggy, bespectacled man. How? Why did this happen? No other way than to mock her self-confidence. But the fact remained. Sophie felt strangely at ease next to Christophe. It was as if she had found a second wind, started life from scratch. For the first time in her life, she spoke to her beloved man in her native language, because both of her former spouses were foreigners. For the first time, I did not feel like a disenfranchised puppet, and Andrzej and Jim were pathological despots, suppressing any manifestation of independence. And for the first time, she felt almost maternal tenderness towards her partner. With her first husband, the famous Polish director Andrzej Zulawski, everything was different. Their romance broke out when Sophie was barely 18. Andrzej was old enough to be her father, but this did not prevent the girl from falling madly in love. For his sake, she quarreled with her parents, dropped out of school, and fled to Poland, tearing up all contracts with a bang. For 17 years, Sophie has been an exemplary wife and assistant to the genius. She washed, ironed, cooked, put up with endless nagging and bouts of gratuitous jealousy. Zulawski forbade her to communicate with friends, tracked every step, monitored correspondence and calls. He could, pretending to be a maid, answer calls to his wife and, with a Polish accent, assure subscribers that Mrs. Sophie has left forever. It was only years later that Sophie realized how low she had fallen, to what extent she had reached self-abasement. She turned into a gray, cloaked shadow, a timid, uncomplaining creature. Once, on a walk in Warsaw, Sophie accidentally saw their reflection in the window and was scared. A stooping, balding fat man was walking next to her, and she looked like a mangy mutt in a baggy coat. The fear of realization has covered her head. She does not want to live like this. He does not want to turn into a poor, unkempt Decemberist, boil bad-smelling laundry in a peeling enamel bowl for the rest of his days. She deserves better, definitely deserves a different share. It was scary to escape from Andrzej, but Sophie took a chance and did not lose. Back in France, she threw herself into her work. She began acting again, shining at social events, gradually gaining her former fame and popularity. She was once again the Sophie Marceau, the fatal beauty whose beauty and talent drove millions of men crazy. On the set of Anna Karenina, Sophie met her second husband, American producer Jim Lemley. At first, he seemed to her like a deliverance, a breath of fresh air after the musty and suffocating atmosphere of marriage with Zhulavsky. Jim looked after her beautifully, gave her gifts, extolled her beauty and acting talent. Sophie was delirious with happiness, feeling like a real queen. Alas, pretty soon the fairy tale turned into a familiar reality. As soon as they got married, Jim began to dictate his rules and set boundaries. He interfered in her career without asking, signed contracts, determined where she would star and in which projects to participate. He even tried to manage her style and wardrobe. And again, endless control, jealousy, scandals, and humiliation. When Sophie couldn't stand it anymore and ran away from Lemley back to France, he didn't even let her take their daughter away. Like, let her try to live alone, and when she comes to her senses, she'll crawl back on her knees. Jim was sure that Sophie was nobody and nothing without him, that she was not capable of making independent decisions. But he cruelly miscalculated. Sophie not only did not return, but also threw herself into working on her own projects. Her directorial debut, Dawn Behind the Clouds, although not very successful with critics, made a lot of noise in the cinema. And now, on the set of her second film, Lost in Deauville, Sophie felt that this was her finest hour, or a stellar chance to rewrite your own life completely. With Christophe, she could be strong and weak at the same time. She could command and make decisions, and at the same time not be afraid to seem ridiculous or ridiculous. She could relax and trust him to be the first in their unusual duet. After all, it is not for nothing that they say, in order to become truly strong, a woman must first allow herself weakness. Next to Lambert, Sophie got her first taste of this delightful game. Christophe did not try to alter it or adjust it to suit himself. On the contrary, he was happy to accept the rules that Sophie set. He was happy to obey, proud of her success, and admired her strength of character. She could easily imagine them together, at home, on a walk, on vacation. Sophie is cooking dinner, and Christophe, getting tangled in his long legs, rushes around the kitchen trying to help. Here they are, laughing, trying on sweaters in the store, and all the options are either short or too narrow in the shoulders. But they are walking along the beach, and Christophe, picking her up in his arms, carries her to the edge of the surf, jokingly portraying King Kong with the beautiful Anne Darrow in his paws. Alas, the idyll did not last long. As soon as the filming of Missing in Deauville was over, Christophe disappeared from Sophie's life as suddenly as he appeared. It was rumored that Marceau was going through a hard breakup, because for the first time in many years, she decided to trust a man and open her heart. But what a strange coincidence. Director Alain Mon called yesterday and invited her to star with Christophe in the melodrama, The Man at the Head of the Bed. Sophie can still hear Mon's voice breaking with excitement. Your heroine, Sophie, if you agree, of course, is a strong-willed woman in the past, but fate kicked her in the gut, twisted her, and finding herself helpless, unhappy, abandoned by everyone, she is left alone with a male nurse. And he, I see only Christophe in this role, is a loser, a former boxer, a drunken type, somehow miraculously brings her back to life. At least let me send you the script. Don't, Sophie said shortly. We agree. Hopefully, both of them. Sophie Marceau and Christophe Lambert were together for 7 years, and then something went wrong, and the couple announced their amicable separation.